going to do an elderly citizen, so I have to do a, let me get the head circles. Oh, it's already, oh my Lord, we talked for nearly an hour. So if you quickly need to go and have a pee, just go and quickly have a pee. If it's cold, like really quick, because this is going, you know, these lessons are quite long. You know, these are our lessons. So a quick pee. Sorry, guys. When I we don't do it here, but when I teach in Larry's trainings, he's got this sort of tradition that you have to have some sort of catchy title for each session. So I called that that's for session Beck's story. What's your son's name? Lockie's story. We could call it Lockie's story. It's quite an interesting little tradition, because the women who are doing the transcripts in the last training in Amsterdam come up, and I'd have to, you know, when you're teaching, you have to come up with some creative, catchy title for a session. And go, oh, to have a little catchy titles. Okay, so we can do it like the ABC show. We have to think of the title at the end of each session, you know, as yet untitled. So we'll call that one Lockie's story. All right, Lockie's story. He's Lachlan, little Lockie. Oh, I wouldn't go there. Just Lockie, it's okay. Yeah, okay, good. New tradition, we love new traditions, especially when we steal them from somewhere else. No, Larry's generous, he'd give it to us. Okay, so lying on the floor. And, you know, having a session like that, obviously there's a lot of movement of thoughts that excite lots of little highways and byways in your brain. So notice how those thoughts and the movement of the thoughts can slow down. So that you know, you can be attending to the thoughts. That's where your attention is. So let's thrash this attention thing a little bit. And you can attend to somewhere else in you. So spontaneously, where did your attention go? Now, because you have already had a lot of training in attention, you might have spontaneously gone into sort of an habitual Feldy kind of attention pattern, which is to sense your contact with the floor. So that's attending to a particular set of stimuli. And where? So if you went to the contact with the floor, did you go to the part that makes the most contact, or the least contact, or the heaviest contact? Now, the insidious thing about pain is that it's an attention grabber. It's a headline seeker. So maybe your attention was pulled by pain. So these habits around attention are really interesting. Do you pay attention to the bit that you don't like about yourself? I don't like the small of my back particularly, so I always pay attention to the small of my back when I'm lying down. Or your neck, or something else. So what grabs your attention, or what draws your attention? And then, this is a weird thing to do, could you pay attention to the place that you habitually pay the least attention to? So this is now, you know what you don't know. You know, because you now have trained in being aware of lots of different body parts, you can actually now understand that there's a part of you that you don't understand or you don't pay attention to a lot. If that makes sense. So where is that part of you? Now, for some people, it's more esoteric. It might be that, well, I never pay attention to my emotions. It might not even be a physical thing. I don't pay attention to my state of being, my emotional state, my affect. So we can broaden it a little bit here. Some people pay too much attention to their affect. It dominates. Or you might find it really hard to wrench yourself from your thoughts. So that's a bit of a free range attention, and this idea of getting to know your attentional habits. And again, it's not to say that your attention being drawn by any of those things is a negative as such. It's more that if that's the only thing you pay attention to the exclusion of other things, you might be missing out on a bit of life. Okay, good. Slowly roll over and come up to sitting. And sit with your soles of your feet together. And have your hands behind you. And make a choice about how much weight you want to commit to your hands. You can commit a lot, and that will be fine. You can commit very little, and that will be fine. They're just different choices. They'll have different consequences because you know this is going to be a head circling lesson. And make one of those circles. Fingers forward if you can. Yep. That we started on Monday, so today's Wednesday, so it's 2 days ago. So revisit that kind of generic head circle. So you can start off however you like. You can warm yourself up. You can make it super tiny. So it's not like you have to roll from shoulder to shoulder. It could be a super tiny circle. Whatever it is that's satisfying, and it's sufficient to clarify for you this idea of a head circle and the pathway or the trajectory, which is why spiffer and stiffer alternate in the Goldfarb lexicon, the trajectory or the pathway of your head. So again, if I put a little dot on the top of your head, so on the crown of your head, what pathway would that make in space? Is it actually a circle? Is it a pentahexagon? There's no such thing. Or maybe there is. A pentahexadecagon. Is it a cube? And if we think about planes of action, so I'll remind you there's the plane of the ceiling and the floor, that horizontal plane. There's a plane of the front wall, which is the coronal plane, the heart plane, and the sagittal plane, the plane of the side walls. Does it traverse? For most people, it traverses across all three. It's not in any one plane. Would that be true to say? Is that a truth? Okay, good. Just rest off your hands for a little bit. Now, remembering that in this lesson, your hands are your responsibility. They're not mine. I care about them, but I have no responsibility for them. So you look after your hands and your shoulders and whatever other bits of you find this demanding. Is that a deal? It's a deal. I'll get, Jenny's not here. I can make a joke about her getting them to sign a piece of paper. Okay, so let's get a little bit technical. So lean on your hands again. And thinking about one of those planes, the plane of the floor. I just made them take responsibility, Jen. They're mature. But we don't have signatures yet. So thinking about the plane of the floor, so this horizontal plane, and thinking about a point on your head, you can choose like the crown or whatever, choose the crown maybe. Can you make a circle in that plane? You can do it as badly as you like without hurting yourself, because I'm not marking you on it. So could you make a circle with your head that is in the plane of the floor? So it's going around in this plane. So if I put a little dot on your head, it would only stay in that plane. How might that happen? What do you do to change your organization? It's not going to be precise, but that's the intention. And there are lots of different ways of doing it. And we will do an exercise. We can have a look at each other doing this later, but we'll just soldier on through the lesson first. So does it change where you have to ask for movement? Change your attention. Can you reverse the circle? So for almost everybody, people have gone smaller. There's lots of different strategies, the way to do it, but almost for all of you, notice without looking at each other necessarily, because then you'll all stop and then no one will be doing it, so there's no one to look at. And your face is actually now staying vertical. Can you get a sense of that? Yeah. So your face, your nose is staying in the same plane, as it were, in order to constrain the movement. Now, where the movement is happening is different in all of you. So some of you are sort of doing it from your bottoms, and some of you are doing it from the base of your neck, and there's lots of different strategies like that. But essentially, you've kept the plane of your face vertical to achieve that. Okay, have a little rest. Rest means lying down for some of you. That's fine. It's fine. It's fine. You are autonomous beings. Not a problem. You just have to get up again in about 5 seconds. So now this lesson, when we start talking about planes and axes, just remember with the general public, this can raise antibodies. People can really, they get a bit anxious because it's a construct that they might feel, it's a bit academic or a bit technical, and just to be aware that it doesn't always work. And so for the general public have no appreciation for planes of action. They're abstract, right? They're a biomechanical abstract. They don't exist in the real world. So I wouldn't use these sorts of things with the general public unless you knew them really well. And so for some of you still, talking about planes and axes, you go, oh God, which one's that one again? You're such a bunch of smarty pants. You picked up that we had something wrong in the online materials. Oh, students who correct their teachers, honestly, where do you think the power lies? Okay, come back to sitting. And lean on your hands, soles of your feet together. And now bringing to mind the plane of the front wall. So the plane of let's do that. The plane of the front wall. So how would you make a circle with your head that stays in that plane? So this is the plane that cuts across you, the heart plane, the coronal plane. You could or you could circle around like that, or you could do something else like that. You could do that. That would be, yeah, you could. So here, this is a good point. That is what part of you do you think your head is that's going to traverse the frontal plane? So if you think your head, if your nose is the reference point, then you'll use your nose. If it's the top of your head, you'll do something different. If it's your eyes, it'll be something different. So you can try all of those things. So this now actually gets a bit technical about what do you think your head is? And what reference point are you using for headness that you are taking in that plane. So I'll give you two options, nose and top of head. And they're very different movements. So what happens in your back, the shape of your spine, the pelvis? What do you have to access? What can you access? What do you access? Good. Change the direction if you haven't already. Are you breathing? Good. Rest off your hands for a moment. And bless you. And now soles of your feet together, leaning on your hands. Bless you. Is it two sneezes? Very tidy little sneeze. Sneeze is so funny. My son's girlfriend goes like this. It's really kind of wakes you up in the middle of the night. Anyway. Okay, and now the third plane is the sagittal. So that's the plane of the side walls. So it's the wheel. So can you please have a crack at taking your head in a circle in that plane? That plane. And again, it depends on what you think your head is. If it's more your nose or it's more the top of the head, try a different reference point that you're taking through space, through this pathway, the trajectory that way. And of course, the hands are a bit of a constraint, and that's fine. You adapt to be with that. So that was another lovely word that these folk came up with about feeling more resilient. Now, isn't that a fantastic thing that we train resilience, because we're training adaptation. We're training people how to work with constraints and how to adapt in a very operational, very concrete kind of way. So nice. I had a lovely night. I got so interested, my neck was tired at the end of it, but that's okay. Awareness, elusive. Okay. Did you change the direction of the circle? Good. Okay. Now, just before you lie down, go back to your original circle, and having really dissected three abstract planes, what is your spontaneous plane when I ask you to make a head circle? And has this clarified by taking you into some very prescribed and abstract and possibly not very organic kind of circles? How has that influenced your own generation of a head circle? Messed it up? Possibly. And you get a sense of how you traverse across all three planes in some way, not as an imposition. That's it. Reverse it if you haven't already. and leave it and have a full rest on your back. Coming back to this constant. This is like coming home onto your back. What difference has this made to your home life, lying on the floor? This is a little microcosm of home life, lying on your back. Thank you. Now roll up to sitting again. And have your soles of your feet together and your hands behind. And begin to make the head circles again in a way that's sustainable. So that might mean that they are smaller, maybe not, because you have to do them at sufficient times for you to very systematically track the sequence of movements throughout the whole of you. So yes, we've been concentrating on the actual pathway of the head, or a point on the head like the nose or the top of the head, but now paying attention all the way down each individual vertebrae of the spine. So you're going to systematically direct your attention, because you are the masters and mistresses of your attention, to the flow of the movement through the system. Your system, not the... And of course, what's really interesting is the bits that you might leave out in that. So if I asked you at any point in time, where's your sternum? And then, of course, the sternum, there's the top of the sternum and the middle of the sternum and the pointy bit at the bottom of the sternum. 12 pairs of ribs. Now, that's very differentiated attention. Don't expect you to be able to track all 12 pairs at the same time. I've mentioned the different vertebrae in the neck, the thorax, the lumbar spine, sacrum, coccyx. So was the coccyx something that you hadn't paid attention to? The hip joints, the thighs, points of the knees, shins, feet, hands, elbows, shoulders, collarbones, shoulder blades. Another thing that I'm really interested in, which is your eyes. So where are your eyes going? So if you're not feeling dizzy, you probably got your eyes shut. Some people have got their eyes open, which is fine. Movement of your eyes might change whether they're open or shut. So just test that out. Do your eyes go with your head? Are they trailing after your head? Are they leading your head? Rest when you need to. But just little pauses, because this is obviously a sequence of attention that you want to keep this attention training going, in a sense. So when you're resting, you're just really resting your arms. Okay, so if those of you who are resting, come back to the movement. And now, with your eyes either open or closed, you can try both. Have your eyes lead the movement. So it's if your eyes are directing the circle. So can you get that sense of the initiation is now in your eyes? So that sequence of events, the initiation of that is now very clearly that the eyes are taking you around in a circle, and your head and the rest of you, whatever, is following that. So you're changing that intention. Now, for some people, that's what they were doing, because they, their eyes organize their movement all the time, and that's fine. So you might want to do it even better. However, you do want to try the alternative, which is the eyes not moving, the eyes just doing nothing, as it were. Change the circle, the direction of the circle. Does any of those options influence your breathing in a different way? Good. Leave it and rest on your back. I've got a story. It's a little story. I don't know a lot about the Alexander technique. I'm slightly embarrassed to say, but I went to one of my friends is a singer, and she did a little voice workshop for us, and she'd had a bit of Alexander training. And one of the things that they do, you probably noticed it if you see an ad to go to an introductory Alexander thing, is you have to bring a whole pile of paperback novels. It's not because you're reading, it's because they use them to get the ideal position for your head in lying on your back like this. I felt, this is how arrogant I am, I felt quite offended, because what they do routinely is you're lying on your back like this, and the instructor comes around and props your head up on as many books as they feel that you need. Now, I mean, obviously we do that to an extent in FI, but you know, the difference is, of course, we'll ask you, how does that feel? And certainly in ATM, we don't tell people how many things to put under their head. We might give advice about try this and try that, but ultimately it's your decision. And so in this Alexander experience, I was told what the best position for my head was. And it shows you how pervasive the Feldenkrais kind of thing is that actually this is my experience that is the most valid here. It's not what you tell me. I mean, we can have a discussion about it, like try 4 books, but where's my viewpoint in this? 3 books, 5 books, 2 books, whatever. So it's just these sort of subtle distinctions, subtle influence that we don't even know so pervasive in the Feldenkrais method about how much we honour that discussion, that recognition of the person's experience. So just remember, and you could accuse me of sometimes just imposing my expertise, but again, it's in that flavour of things. How do we manifest our absolute primacy of the person's experience? And that really does mean as a teacher, you have to disappear a bit. So just having a little think about that as you're lying there. I'm just watching you there with your head at different heights and thinking what an un-Alexander class you are. And beautiful as well. Okay, come back up to sitting and have the soles of your feet together. And this time, hold your right ankle with your right hand and your left ankle with your left hand, lightly. And so maintaining that very gentle hold with both hands, begin to make head circles. And what's the influence of your arms being in this position? What's the influence on the ability of the chest and the sternum to move? Because it's more habitual to have your arms in front, do you go into a more habitual, habitual pattern? What about the pelvis? What about the pelvis? So you can experience the arms as a constraint here. How do you tackle this movement puzzle, finding a way to still access all the things that you know help your head to make a circle with this constraint, this restriction in a way? Your feet have to stay on the floor. Yep. And your hands stay on your ankles. And again, quietly allow your attention to pass through all of you, the known and the unknown. Change the direction of the circle if you haven't already. So for some people's strategies, this is actually a freer way to do the head circles. For other people, it's an absolute constraint. So this is a quite a unique and individual set of instructions. Okay, good. Leave it. And now roll over and lie on your stomach. You don't need a rest. Tough, resilient folk. And prop up on your right elbow and right forearm, but leave your left arm lying down by your side. So the palm will be facing towards the ceiling, so you're not twisting. The left arm is down by your side. That's it. Resting on the back of your left hand. And keep your left shoulder up off the floor if you can. Yeah. Yeah, collapsing. So the left shoulder is elevated. So what can you do to organize yourself so that you are clearly propped up on your right elbow, and your left shoulder, so your right shoulder is definitely off the floor, and so is your left shoulder, maybe not as high. And now begin to make a head circle. How do you do it? What is more difficult about it? Maybe some things are some parts of the circle are easier, but maybe not. Who knows? What do you? I'm being Pollyanna. Something might be easier. Might be easier than. Nah, don't know. Don't know what would be easier than. What's happening with your breathing? How do you adapt? What's your strategy? Series of strategies. Efforting, bracing, holding. Left shoulder's off the floor. Yeah. To be honest, it doesn't say, but I think it doesn't. It doesn't have to be in a fixed distance off the floor. What's happening with your breathing? So, if we could teach the public one thing about resilience, or this I can kind of concept, is breathing. No activity is worth holding your breath for. So breathing is just one of those things we don't compromise about. So how do we function and breathe? It's a kind of a basic. What's happening in your back that's different? Your chest? Where do you have to move more? Where do you have to move less? Rest for a moment if you're not already. The other thing that I got out of reading these interviews was because pain was the motivator that had brought all of them, this particular cohort, to the method. For all of them, their relationship to pain had changed. So a lot of them were actually pain-free, but not all of them. However, for all of them, their relationship to pain had changed. And that was very insightful. So, again, it's about managing expectations. They were perfectly fine with that. They were perfectly fine that pain was still, cropped up. However, their relationship to it had changed, and the way they attended to it had changed, and the way they responded to it had changed. So Cliff was talking about this idea of a change in attitude, and where attitude is not just a cognitive attitude, but actually a physical attitude, which apparently is the original meaning of attitude is, you have a physical pose that aligns with an attitude. Now we think of it more as a mental attitude or an emotional attitude, but it's all three. And so they talked about this shift in their attitude. It was really interesting. Very, very interesting. Okay. So you're on your front again and come into that same position so that you're, oh no, do it on the other side, sorry. So left elbow and left forearm, right arm long beside you on the back of the right hand. Right shoulder is not collapsed onto the floor. And begin, when you've kind of got that configuration sorted, begin the circle. And is it easier on this side or is it harder? This will tell you something about, you'll have a preference for which arm is a good propping arm and which arm is not so good at propping. How do you find stability on the left arm compared with how you found some stability on the right arm? Or maybe that's not the point. It's actually about the fact that your right arm is sort of dangling in space. And if you kept on doing this, which part of you would be the most whingy, which is always a good part to, it's a good sign that that part is being overused. So maybe spread the load a little bit more. And what's the influence on the circle? So where does the circle now become really hard as opposed to where does it maybe become a little bit easier? And are you breathing? Leave it, rest on your back, roll onto your back, have a full rest. Notice the influence of all those movements on your attitude, on your attention. They're different things allied. Can you allow your attention to travel, move, waft down the length of your spine? Remembering that the spine was the feature of the scan yesterday and the day before. The length of the spine and the shape of the spine, and therefore the influence on those, at least those two features, the length and the shape. There's more things you could sense, but let's stay with those, of these quite perturbing circular movements that are predominantly from the top of the spine, but inevitably pick up all the links in the chain of the spine. inevitably, because this is the third day we're doing it, it's not inevitable on Monday when, let's just say, a lot of the links were not engaging. And we'll rest from the ATM. I think that the ATM actually keeps going, but we'll have a tea break now, I think, because we're going into another cycle. We'll come back to the ATM after the tea break. So it's 11:15. So slowly get up. How can you sort of do a minimalist re-engagement with the world so that you don't completely disengage from the ATM, but you you can do that. You can just roll up and lean on each other.